not just against the idea of media freedom and the idea of free speech, but more fundamentally it is, as you know, something that has a chilling effect on specific types of free speech, because it's never the CBC types that are targeted by this. It's always conservative, independent media. And I did a panel here at Canada Strong and Free Network Conference to talk about this. And the reality is independent media is kind of owned by the right now. It's the right that does really well on this. So when you go after independent media, you're targeting conservatives. You're targeting people on the right.
It's interesting. You're negative about how that's one of the police officers really wanted a government badge. That's just a mindset. Here in Ottawa, like everyone works for the government.
Well, everyone has a government badge. Starbucks employee has a government badge, I think, in Ottawa.
Exactly. No, but I think you're right. It's interesting because there is a lot of independent-ish journalists on the left as well. Journalists who talk to the weird thing is a lot of them just kind of end up becoming government-funded, government-associated. Places like the Walrus, which is kind of small.
The National Observer, which is like government-funded reporters now.
Right, exactly. So they don't stay independent because they don't keep that. And right now, I mean, with conservatives, it's like there's this whole growing movement of kind of grassroots independent shoppers. So many of them now. It's great to see, but it's like, you know, we're just a big Goliath situation because we're up against not just the behemoth of the CBC that gets $1.4 billion a year, and they really influence the press coverage. So they don't know everything else, right? And also the corporate media, the conservative capitalism is seeping in. We heard from George Money, who's a former radio host at Bell, who's news talk in Toronto, and he was talking about how even though he is an independent-minded black man, he was looking for the upper high ups at Bell and sources, and then the newspapers also publishing the news front, and they're subsidized. They have the media available. So it's really, you know, we feel like really well stuff to get conference. They can't sort of feel these activists, so many of them to manage around really love the these kind of events, conferences, getting to meet the people who support more, watch programs, to connect with these grassroots that way, you're so small compared to these big giants, and you really kind of feel like you have your work cut out for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would also say that the challenge is going to be, I mean, just to illustrate an anecdote, one of the things that we see people on the right is put up with right support media, they support it, but you go down that road of almost siloing, you're mainstream, you're to the left, and you're independent to the right. One of the things we want to expand our audience. I know issues watching CBC, and I do that generally in theory, I know issues because I want to see and have a broader discussion, a broader conversation, and it's challenging because we are in a space where we don't have little links, we don't have the subsidy head start that a lot of these other groups on the left do. But I also think that content is king, and content eventually is what's really going to trust in mainstream news and content, and it's what elevates trust in independent media, as much as we are on the others, that we are dealing with very similar, but that takes time. It takes time to sort of leave that stranglehold that we have on official media.
It's kind of back to like capitalist theory. It's like, you know, that needs to get subsidized. People don't have that. Yeah, there's like a market. There's some people forced to make decisions that might be interesting, like Winnipeg for rights, and you can forever. When half their money comes from government, and you go on the website, it's like really clunky and old, and they're not entering the 21st century, they're not going to bring it in. It's the same thing these days. You know, most media, big union shops that don't know how to club music, right? I was talking earlier with Holly Owen, who's a founder of Black House Reporter, and she's from independent media, and she wants to do content. It's like people want good journalism.
They're really increasingly not getting that from the mainstream media anymore, so they're turning to independent people. I really do feel like we have our work cut out for us. So I want to talk to you. You know, the big story of the week is something that's spilling over from the United States. This decision that was leaked out from the Supreme Court of the United States overturning Roe versus Wade. People who are familiar with this court case, like, it's almost universally agreed that this case was really poorly argued, that it doesn't stand up to scrutiny, that it's a very bad decision. And yet, you know, this question of abortion, the abortion debate in the U.S. is spilled out. You know, they're having it. It's happening in the United States. It's to Canada. All the politicians on the left, all the media use it as an opportunity to say, well, first of all, to say about how glorious Canada is because we don't have abortion laws, but then also to try to turn it against the conservatives. We know in 2019, a large part of the reason why I think Andrew Scheer ultimately wasn't successful is because he didn't have a good answer to this question about abortion, about gay marriage, and people were worried that he was a religious zealot or something like that. I think that the liberals right now are just so excited that this issue is something that the media will talk about and use it to paint conservatives as being sort of anti-woman or whatever. Have you heard, you know, we're at this conference with all these conservative activists, have you heard a lot of people talking about it? What's your take on how this will affect the conservative leadership race and conservative movement broadly in Canada?
Yeah, I haven't heard too much yet at the conference specifically, but just in the last few days, the one point that I've raised, I think I raised this on my show the other day, is that abortion is a wedge for conservatives in a way that it isn't for the liberals. And it used to be, but the liberals under Justin Trudeau have just purged anyone that doesn't go along with Justin Trudeau's view on this from their caucus. So the liberals are in lockstep with each other, the NDP, the Bloc are in lockstep. So they know that it's not at all, there's no losing when they bring it up. They just want to force conservatives to have some stand up and say I'm pro-life and some stand up and say they're pro-choice. A divide that works within the Conservative Party that has always allowed for people to approach these issues and other issues of conscience from whichever perspective they like. But they know that then the CBC is going to go into overdrive, the Toronto Star, and it's going to be all these antiquated anti-woman dinosaurs, and it just goes into this whole thing. So what you need is a conservative that can, and you touched on this with the Andrew Scheer observation, that can defend and sell their position. Not necessarily to convert people to explain it, because defense isn't working. You get conservatives that end up apologizing for their values, which is never the way you win it. Leslie Lewis has done a great job of this. She's put out her platform on abortion, which is no hidden agenda, and she said, this is what I stand for, boom, boom, boom. And as a result, there's not only that much criticism, but she faces from the media because either they don't sense that weakness that they do other times. Yeah, like where it's like someone feels like they've been caught doing something they're not supposed to do. If you believe it, own it.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, there's a weird thing where, well, first of all, I just want to say the media is so dishonest on this issue. They completely black and white. You're either, you either believe that we're begins at conception, in which case all abortions are in circumstances, not a white woman.
Which is my point, position on pro-lifers.
Right, right. Well, and even maybe a lot of you might not want to legislate that way. And then the other side's like, okay, you know, the baby's born by your mind, and you know, it's like no laws on abortion, it's not really we don't care. But the reality is that most babies fall somewhere in the middle. They probably do want protections in the case of abortions, so sex-life abortions. There's so much more nuance in this. But you guys saw the Jean Montreal page. They had the faces of all the conservative views who they have called pro-life, and it's like they're perpetuating this idea that, you know, people in the Conservative Party have like this really removed view that's so offside from the Canadian public. When of course there's I look at that by and large Canadians and even most conservatives just don't want to have a discussion. They would prefer to talk about it and not issue the rest. So if you're less who's able to, you know, very substantially explain your position, there's no reason to push him to watch your
yeah.
There's an opportunity to embarrass her when they were able to embarrass her, at least catch Andrew Scheer finally.
Yeah, I think the one area where I would slightly disagree with that is that the status quo in Canada is unique in the world in not a good way. Zero laws, zero restriction at all. Technically, if you've got a doctor, you have abortion before a child is born. That's fair. When Canadians learn about that, they're opposed to it. But Canadians don't know it. Sex-less abortion as well. Raising a child for no reason other than you don't want a daughter is one of the largest motivating factors in some cultures towards abortion. Canadians don't know that's legal. When they do, they oppose it. So whenever you think of those policies, there are nuances to it. They're locked in the dichotomy of pro-life, pro-choice, or pro-life, anti-choice, pro-abortion, anti-abortion. Like these semantics that people bring into it. And I mean, Trudeau, he could backfire what he's done because he's now said that we need to introduce legislation to ensure that this right to abortion in Canada is unshakable and it won't ever take away. And he said, now, being honest, some people want to have it. That's what conservatives wanted. They said, let's have a discussion about this. It allows us to talk about what other more difference of crime, whether sex-life abortion, what late-term abortion. And I could see, I mean, setting aside the name of those comments right now, I could see if we did have a national discussion about abortion, Canadians settling on, you know, if you're trying to abortion or not, they should have. So it could backfire.
Yes, because looking into the U.S., a lot of Americans are misled about what does. You know, the idea of legislating from the courts, not something that has tradition, and kind of really wants to say that Roe v. Wade wants to overturn laws rather than the Senate, the state Senate, lawmakers who are elected to make those decisions, to be in much better hands of people who have, are represented by the public as opposed to somebody that, for like, that has, very close to accountability. But also the idea that it was just immediately ban abortion all over the United States. Obviously, the states' rights, so the states of California, New York, and have changed laws to ban abortion, whereas other states. But the interesting thing is you look at the European Union, countries in Europe that have laws already banning abortion for 50s, 40s, and 80s. So that's a lot of countries an outlier, have any laws of sort of there is more than like 2 half succession, and it is so I think
Trudeau might be a little bit surprised with where the Canadian public is because, again, we're so misled. I'll just give another example from Fake News Friday. Ecos, which is run by Frank Graves, who is a sort of interesting character and a pollster that's not always very reliable. He put something out that said it's not something like 80% of Canadians are pro-choice and only 12% are pro-life or something like that. Again, these euphemisms that don't really, people might not have really thought through what they mean. But if you think that you have 80% of the Canadian public on your side, you might be much more brazen to go forth to try to legislate something. But then you might not realize all this nuance that's within and all the views that Canadians have that are actually not black and white and have a lot of room for discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the role of Canadian politicians, is to take on these sort of important moral and cultural issues and help navigate through it. And so Trudeau's style of divide, wedge, demonize, I can see that all playing out. I don't think that's really the direction we want to go in a country that's not serious. We want to go in the conservative movement, but might be headed there again from external factors. What else is on your mind? You had this convention. There's a lot of exciting speakers. Do you have any interesting interviews lined up?
Well, obviously, the debate event, which you play a role in the leadership debate, has been a big part of what a lot of people want to get out of this. And my hope is, in general, that whenever we have a forum like this where conservatives are coming together, and I use it with a small c, that people are talking about the movement itself, not just the day-to-day electoral politics and the horse racing, but the movement itself and the values. Because victory without values is meaningless. Values without victory is also in its own way meaningless. I mean, you can die on a hill, but if it died for something. But if you're at the end of the day not doing anything with it, it's understandably challenging. So I think that you need to start talking about the tactical things of how you win, but you also need to talk about what it is that you stand for. And I think the principles matter. And oftentimes we assume the principles are antithetical to victory, which I think is a big failing in the Conservative Party.
Well, and that's why it's great to be around activists and people who have really strong convictions in expertise areas of activism, because you're getting everybody in a space together provides an opportunity to have discussions, have those debates, not just about figure exactly where we think, where we stand on different issues, and get the ball rolling to events where interviewers are often playing defense. It's like, it's great to be at events. It's great to just be around people that have different baskets.
And you're on coworkers, so you usually never members.
Yeah, we have people who are just very much. They're the first time I did the so it sounds like there's so much more opportunities. But it's Friday, and it's Friday.
So it's the morning after the first candidates debate in the Conservative leadership. It would be fair to say, I think it escalated quickly. Pierre Poilievre appeared to get under your skin, but on the plus side, I think, for people watching or for your supporters, you got passionate in response. But why would you put yourself through all of this in your state of life?
So there's people like yourself that go, why is he doing this? Well, because of what I believe in. It's been the story of my life. And people who are involved in politics, if they're involved for the right reason, are there because they believe in a number of things, and your life is significant. And that's what I believe in. It's been the story. I mean, from the moment I ran in '84 to running for the leadership in '93, the day after. I mean, this isn't just about, the day after the '93 campaign, which was a train wreck. There's 2 of us left. I'm 35 years old. I could have chosen to do something else, and maybe had I known what I was getting myself into, maybe I would have done. And it's the kind of decision you make at a certain point in your life where you don't know everything you're getting, and so be it. I have no regrets, but I did it. I didn't back down from that challenge back then, and I never backed down from any challenge.
Well, let me ask you about that. So people my age remember, you spent 4 years rebuilding the Progressive Conservative Party. Was. You were then a standard bearer in the '95 referendum, then moved to Quebec and fought Bouchard essentially to a standstill because he didn't hold the third referendum, which he may well have done if he did.
That was the plan. That's what he says.
But for many of today's Conservatives, though, these are old war stories.
Yeah.
It's ancient history.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any recognition, far less gratitude.
Well,
Does that upset you?
No, and I'm not looking for gratitude at all. I did what I did because I believed in it, but it is relevant for one reason. We can't take our country for granted. Anyone who thinks we can is making a grave mistake, and that's what I see now. Anyone who thinks that the humor or the sentiment of Western Canadians is just a passing thing that will go away is making a huge mistake.
But the battles then were generally about national unity. It seems to me the divisions today are quite different. They seem to be between the elites, of which I guess you and I are deemed to be representative, and the people with no control, which appear to be represented by people like Pierre Poilievre. Do you recognise that framing, or think it's true?
I think our challenge is to speak to what it is that is the things that unite us in a higher calling. It isn't to cultivate those differences. That's the difference. If you're in politics, you have a choice. You can speak to the lowest common denominator, cultivate the dark side of people's, because we are human beings, and that is a choice you make very early on in your career. Or alternatively, which is what I believe in, you try to reach for higher ground. that's always the case. It is always the case. And that's what I believe in. And by the way, yes, I'm not about the past, but the past speaks. It says something about your character and about who you are, and what you believe in.
Well, on that point, your father, again, raised the issue of your fiscal record in Quebec, that you raised taxes and left a deficit. Can you tell us in a nutshell about the government's fiscal record in Quebec?
It's one of the best performances in the country, if you look at the real record. Deficit's a good example. I'll give you one example. We did a fund in 2006 called the Generational Fund, Fonds de Génération, to reduce the size of the debt. And what we did was take revenue from non-renewable resources to put in the fund to reduce debt. The credit rating agencies gave us a very high score, and we were able to reduce the size of the debt relative to GDP. And to this day, that fund is still there. It's still viewed as one of the foundations of Quebec's policy and its fiscal house. What I was faced with when I came in relative to what I left in the end was a world of difference. And you know what the story is, John? It's about fiscal discipline. I had learned, by the way, what Mr. Kinsey had done in the 90s. And Kinsey had cut federal transfers to the provinces, 40% cash transfers, and this is 40%. And created a lot of damage. He did that. Then Chief Shaw, end of the 90s, to balance the budget, retires, pays 5,000 nurses to retire, pays 1,300 doctors to retire, to stop working. We think back today and we say that was. Now they didn't, both of them didn't do that because they wanted to hurt anyone. But they thought that was the best approach. When I'm elected in 2003, I said, I'm not going to do that. We took an approach where program spending was below nominal growth, and we maintained it in discipline. And we didn't have to break everything along the way to get there. And you know what? When we left office, we left one of the best economies in the country. Jobs, the fiscal situation, a higher credit rating in Quebec than Ontario? Really? Well, there's a reason for that. It's called discipline, determination, and that's what I did. And it's called good management. So I'm very proud of that. The overall fiscal picture when I left is that Quebecers are paying less. And the deficit, I mean, you heard of
Excuse us, speak to a historical view of many people that this record, and the ignorance of the facts, that this record is now being tarnished is
I'll just give you one example, ignorance of the facts. We just conveniently forget that in that period of time we had the biggest recession since the Great Depression of 1929. The federal government also went into deficit spending. We all did, and for the right reasons. But Quebec had the best performance of Ontario, Canada, the United States, and Europe. And why? Because I reduced personal income taxes. And on average for middle-class families and lower-income families, that was $2,000 a year. And don't take my word for it. I mean, the Japan Credit Rating Agency, if I remember correctly, who gives us our credit rating, pointed that out as being one of the reasons why Quebec's economy performed better than the rest of Canada, because I reduced personal income taxes. And you know what? The Harbour government, of which Mr. Boudier was part of, opposed that. They thought that was a bad idea because I used the money from what they had, what was called back then, the fiscal.
I remember it well. It went down very well in Quebec. It went down very poorly in the rest of Canada.
Why?
Because I think the money was deemed to be aimed at expanding services in Quebec, not in cutting income tax.
I just don't get it. I really don't get it. I really do.
But you appreciate that the sort of the antipathy toward you comes from because you're around at the time.
John, let me point out, 9 provinces out of 10 that year reduced income tax. 9 out of 10. But we were
I don't have the facts, but I do remember. I do remember that there was huge surprise in federal circles that you elected that.
A conservative government who thinks reducing income tax is a bad idea. A, B, we live in a federal system. Since when does the federal government dictate to a province? I mean, for us, we just shrugged and said, what? And by the way, we should send the exchange that we had in the newspapers between Michael Fonsi. Remember Michael Fonsi? He wrote a paper on that. Any podcast, and I responded. I want to send you that, and you'll have more time to read what the story is. Okay, moving on. Yes, we can follow yesterday. When you say not to run in 2020, you talked about making changes in the Conservative Party. Yeah, presumably those changes still exist. So why run now? Because I see a country that's even more divided now than it's ever been, and I think Mr. Trudeau's leadership has been good for the country economically. We're at sea. You know, Mr. Trudeau's government has been all about spending, and during COVID we get it. I mean, we get it. We all agreed that we had to spend and support the economy and avoid the worst. Do you think it was true? It contributes to inflation, sure it does, as it does all over the world. But you know, this whole story on inflation has been around for the last, and there was this great debate whether it was transitory or whether the central banks made around the ball. They did, but all of them. The European Central Bank just set that down. So did the Bank of England. So did the Fed. They all did. And I gave an interview before going into the race meeting, and I was asked whether they should increase rates on the 26th of January. I thought the bank at that point should have raised. I'm not contesting that. I'm not in it. You're not contesting it. Remain as independent. No, I'm not. It's the side which is honestly bizarre. But you know, it is inflationary. And I always thought it would be inflationary. Of course, how could you otherwise reform all this money into the economy? How long can you defy the laws of gravity? Is the real question. Put it in simple terms. Same thing with the amount of debt. And then this modern monetary theory that's brought up, which is all funny based on the assumption that money grows on trees. And I'm not saying that's what Bank Canada did. There are those who will suddenly discover this theory. Now, we're at a point where we have to devolution and we have to control spending. And I think we also have to look at tax and the burden of maybe we have to allow unions to be able to catch up on their ability to increase wages, which is that's the issue. We should look at reducing income tax. And then if we want to increase the short-term danger for us to increase taxation, that's good. And we've seen that before. So low economic growth and inflation. That's the thing we need. So we're going to need policies to control the economy. We need more growth. And that's where the federal government is being great. The rest is all about spending. And it's not about economic growth. Whatever they've done certainly hasn't worked. You mentioned bizarre feeling on the one hand, the thing that's so bizarre seems to me is Davos money. This whole working on forum conspiracy. And yet, correct me wrongly, you kickstarted Canada, EU trade at Davos, you had a lot of but then you finished. I did. And that's where it happened. And the story on that is interesting because Jeremy Kinsey was our ambassador in the EU, came to me the first attorney, saying that we're negotiating some investment agreement, which is similar to other countries. And it's not going to be there's no Ontario involved. And I mentioned yesterday, nothing projects happen unless there's some grants on the transition, and they said nothing. And so he got enough to stop by, and that's where saying you should look at this one. You could, if you choose to. And White Clarence was the chair of the Canada European Business Team, so he also one of the organized meeting business teams with Dallas. And that's because, and that's where I was supposed to. And it's very interesting because we just come off the water for us. And the European Commission sometimes deals with virtual office, which is all taken take fixed. And the question he asked is, why do we do what's money work on to it? And there's targets left to it. One was, we have an opportunity to do something new. It would be translating this out in Canada because we are easier sometimes. The most work is my own business.
hand you didn't shake, anyways.
Well, he didn't shake my hand. That's what you're saying. Is that it? So, I have a lot of respect for them, and I don't underestimate them. I never underestimate my adversaries in politics in this race. And in the end, we have to all work together.
And just, related, Poilievre has 4 times the support in caucus that you've got. For somebody who wants to unite the party, is that a problem if you win?
If you know anything about the histories of leadership races, you'll know that caucus support is not, and far from it, a determining factor in whether who wins or not. It's the memberships that will decide. A and B, John. It's human nature. I'm not in the caucus, and he is, which is fine. I'm not offended by that. The day after, though, it'll be very important to work with caucus, and I've done that in all circumstances, and I have a good track record of working with caucus. I believe in that relationship.
Finally, so you, working with Huawei while the two Michaels were being detained in China was, I think people would agree, not a good look. You said in the debate that you were proud of working for the release of the two men, and that if anybody wanted evidence should speak to Michael Kovring's ex-wife, Rafina Nandibola, which I did, and she said she was very grateful for your efforts and your support. Can you tell us what you actually did?
Well, we talked several times during that whole period of time to try to sort out the situation so that the two Michaels would return, because it became quite obvious that we were able to sort out that whole case of the extradition that Michaels would return. Michaels was a state-sanctioned kidnapping. That's what it was. It wasn't, there's no other way to describe it. And so, as much as I can tell you, we worked very hard, knowing full well that if we were able to sort that out, the two Michaels would return. And that's why I worked very closely with Rafina Nandibola when I came to admire really. I think she was quite extraordinary.
But your role was more on the expedition than on in England.
Well, we worked, all of that became part of the same story. But let me just back up a bit. Huawei was welcomed to Canada by the Harper government, and I'm not blaming them, I'm not faulting them for that, because at the time, it made sense. But then the story changes as we move, as often is the case. Now, when I'm doing work for them, I'm not doing anything contrary to the interest of the country. I'm not doing lobbying. And then as we move into this leadership race and events have happened, I am very committed to the policy of banning lobbying, and I will do that, and because that's the higher interest of the country. And so I'm very comfortable with what I did, and I'm proud that I was able to help in whatever way, helping release the two Michaels, because we worked very sincerely to help make that happen. As a Canadian, we felt very strongly. When I say we, in fact, our team felt very strongly that if we could do anything to make that happen, that we would, and we strive to make that happen, and it did.
Okay, well, I think we're out of time. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
It's day 3 of the provincial election campaign, and development, both educational and residential, like this one here at Dixie and Lakeshore, are top of mind for the opposition parties. I'm Christina Howard, and today Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca promised to hire thousands of new teachers and a new optional grade 13. Meanwhile, the NDP's Andrea Horwath is promising to make a big dent in Ontario's housing shortage.
I want you to hold on to your dreams of home ownership. I want you to hold on to those dreams because we have a plan that will give you a lifeline, that will give you that chance to be able to own your own home.
It's a plan that aims to encourage more development of starter homes.
The missing middle. It's like the starter homes, the townhouses, the duplexes, triplexes, those kinds of starter homes that can get help people get a foot in the door.
It's a major issue across the province, and perhaps more so in the GTA, where the Liberals and the NDP are in tight races for second place. A forum research poll conducted on Thursday reveals that the Tories have a notable lead with 37% support amongst decided voters. The Liberals and NDP are neck and neck at 29 and 26% respectively. In Toronto proper, only 8 points separate the Conservatives from the NDP. And the vote rich 905, the Conservatives have a commanding lead, with the NDP keen to make up some important ground. But they also plan on breaking ground with affordable rental units.
We build 250,000 units of affordable housing through Ontario Housing, get back into the housing business, if you will, and make sure that people can afford the places that they rent.
The NDP's Housing Ontario will build homes that will be run by cities, co-ops, and non-for-profits. It will also invest over $1 billion to repair more than 250,000 affordable homes. But today, the Liberals were focused on yet another major ballot box issue: education.
We know in Ontario today there are about 80,000 people who are members of the College of Teachers, therefore they're certified to teach, yet they're not teaching in our publicly funded systems. I am convinced that we will be able to find the 10,000 women and men to work in our schools to be able to deliver smaller class sizes, the optional grade 13, and to set our kids up for success.
Stephen Del Duca has already promised a hard cap of 20 students per class across all grade levels. But today, he announced a plan for 1,000 new mental health professionals for schools and an optional grade 13 for students who may have struggled during the pandemic.
We would keep this in place for 4 years at a minimum, so the cohort of students who are in the system right now in high school, about to enter high school, could actually have this option.
Now, despite the Liberals' promise to hire thousands of new teachers today, the OSSDF, that's the union representing Ontario's high school teachers, issued a media release saying that on Monday they will fully endorse all NDP candidates running in Toronto. Those are seats that the Liberals would need if they are to form the next government. In Mississauga, Christina Howard, City News.
In a rare, even historic move, Amnesty International denounced Russia's unlawful use of force as a violation of the United Nations Charter and an act of aggression, a crime under international law. This is a move we very rarely make. The evidence we have gathered since the Russian invasion of Ukraine began in late February 2022. It implicates Russian military forces in serious violations of international law, including extrajudicial killings, disproportionate indiscriminate attacks against civilians, including in densely populated areas, deployment of cluster munitions
concrete barriers added overnight in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, blocking the street near security fencing that went up earlier this week following heated upheaval over a leaked draft opinion that would overturn the Roe v. Wade landmark ruling supporting abortion rights in the U.S. Protests for and against the potential ruling have been largely peaceful, but law enforcement officials are reportedly bracing for possible violent unrest in Washington and across the country, with U.S. Capitol Police issuing an alert. According to CNN, authorities are warning of far-right calls for violence against a religious group planning an upcoming protest in support of abortion rights. Demonstrators have been taking to the streets and cities across the U.S. since Politico's bombshell report signaling a reversal of Roe v. Wade was in the works. The top court later confirmed the document that went public was authentic, but was a draft, not the final decision, which is expected next month. A probe into the leak is underway. While polls show the majority of Americans support the right to an abortion in all or most cases, tensions are high over the issue. In Louisiana, lawmakers are taking another step forward this week to classify abortion as a homicide crime. It's one of 13 states with a trigger law that would immediately ban abortion if Roe v. Wade is overturned. On the other side of the political spectrum, Rhode Island's highest court on Wednesday upheld a state law guaranteeing its citizens' right to abortion. As Reuters reports, and amid the uncertainty of Biden abortion bills, which can be sent by mail, it says the number of women requesting restrictions or information about their use through the group's website has skyrocketed since the draft opinion was leaked.
Monday we had another 230 visitors to the site, and then on Tuesday we had 13,530 visitors to the site. So a big part of what's happening is that people are requesting advanced provision of medication abortions so that they have it on hand for when this decision does become final and official.
The next week, the U.S. Senate is set to vote on a bill that would make Roe v. Wade the law of the land, but it's expected to be just largely a symbolic move. Democrats who are behind the push need the support of Republicans to help make it happen, and that's very much most likely will be no vote. Melissa Duggan, City News.
It's called Pekiskwewin, which means language in Cree. The project was launched after the university's Indigenous Communication Arts program secured a federal heritage grant to help preserve, interpret, and revitalize Indigenous languages. Felicia Dewar with the university says it's critical to do this now.
Language is intrinsically connected to our culture and more importantly to our identity. You know, and I think about different phrases and words and how they don't necessarily have that direct translation in English. So you're losing the meaning even. You know, there's a number of languages like we've had difficulty finding Nakota and Lakota fluent speakers. Those are two in Saskatchewan that, you know, that language is almost gone.
The podcast feature teachers and language teachers covering a wide range of topics.
We have formats talking about prayer. So we have probably two episodes up. One is morning prayer, one is morning midship prayer. We have another midship podcast speaking with elders off of Highway 5155 in Saskatchewan there. We've got one on food sovereignty in Dakota, which I think is just fantastic. We also have one in the works that's going to be basically similar to a Dear Abby with romance questions and that kind of thing. That should be a lot of fun. And we have another one posted on parenting and social traditional social parenting.
Many of our podcasters have never even listened to a podcast, and the university offers training to help them with things like doing interviews to more technical help with recording and producing a podcast.
As a legacy for the folks that are doing this work and creating this podcast, it's a legacy for them, not just for their community, but for the upcoming generations.
People can listen to the first podcast at pekiskwewin.ca.